Hey guys, welcome back to The Mind of Brandon. Today we're going to be talking about the Flat Earth Furor. Now this is a viewer requested video. I have been asked to talk about this subject, and I thought it was a great idea because I have noticed in recent months that there does seem to be an increasing amount of people coming on YouTube relaying this conspiracy theory that NASA has been lying to people about the shape of the Earth. Those space photos that show a spheroid Earth, well, those are hoaxes. They're fakes. That's not what the Earth actually looks like. In fact, space itself is not what we generally perceive it to be, nor are any of the stars or any of the other planets. We've never had any robots on Mars or any moon landings. That's all lies, right? It's all just part of NASA's scam. It's just a way to make money. So if you're looking at a flat Earth map, the North Pole is going to be dead center instead of at the topmost part of the map. And instead of having a South Pole at the bottommost part of the map, Antarctica, that giant island that you would find at the South Pole, well, instead of being a giant island, it's actually understood as a giant wall of ice that goes around the circle of the Earth. The circle of the Earth. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, the Holy Bible. That's right, apparently a good chunk of these flat Earth conspiracy theorists are also with the camp that views the Bible to be the divinely inspired and inerrant Word of God, and they think that everything in it is 100% true. So we really shouldn't be surprised that they think the Earth is flat, since that's what their Bible teaches. The Bible was written by flat earthers. Back in antiquity, that was the common conception across all sorts of different cultures. This idea that the Earth was this relatively flat and disc-shaped object, circumimposed by the dome of heaven, both of which were perceived to be floating in a sea of primordial waters. That is, waters that existed prior to the creation of heaven and earth. Right? This is the commonly held conception of the universe across a variety of different cultures in antiquity, and we do see it perpetuated in the Bible. Okay, some religious devotees will claim that that's not the case, but they're wrong. So that's something that me and the flat earthers can actually agree on. The Bible does teach that the Earth is flat. Something I disagree with the flat earthers on is this concept that the Bible is the divinely inspired and inerrant Word of God and everything in it is 100% true. Okay, the Bible has contradictions in it. It's really easy to find the first ones right there in the first two chapters. Okay, it has contradictions. It has a talking snake. It has a talking donkey, talking trees. There's all sorts of crazy, miraculous, fantastic things that we never see in reality. People might claim every now and then that they see something like that, but if you're a science-minded individual, like myself, then you're going to want those people to have pretty compelling evidence to substantiate those claims, or else it's going to be pretty hard to believe them. So apart from flat earthers citing Bible passages at people to provide evidence that the Earth is flat, one of the first things I came across when I started researching this subject matter, looking into why is it that people, think the Earth is flat, what do they perceive as evidence that the Earth is flat? One of the first things I came across was this guy, he was saying, here, I'll show you, if the Earth is round, okay, then the people on the underside of the Earth, this is what this guy is saying, the people on the underside of the Earth will fall down, right? That's what would happen if the Earth is round, right? Let me get some static electricity going on here, right? Got a Trident wrapper. Check this out. Okay. Obviously, it's not that simple. People on the underside don't necessarily fall down. So, what's up? What's down? That's all relative. What's keeping humanity glued to the Earth is gravity. And gravity is not just something made up by Isaac Newton, right? The laws of Newton, the reason we call them laws is because of how well tested they are, all right? I'll just give you an example. This is William Herschel, the guy who discovered the planet Uranus. Just kind of came upon it while he was looking through his telescope. Which, by the way, if you guys want your own telescope, you can buy one. You can look at those celestial objects yourself. Right? But yeah, anyway, this guy's just kind of looking at the sky, and he finds Uranus one day. He thought it was a comet at first, but he's like kind of noticing, curious comet doesn't really behave the same way that any good comet ought to, right? Yeah, what it came down to is he discovered the planet Uranus. And, there's this interesting experiment that you can do with Newtonian physics. You can use it on the various planets in the solar system. Worked on Mars, worked on Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, right? Basically, you can, predict where these objects are going to be at a certain time of day, okay? But when we tried to do this with Uranus, well, where we predicted Uranus would be, and then where it actually wound up being when looking through a telescope, the two didn't match up, okay? Something was wrong. Something was wrong. And it turned out something was wrong with the calculations. There was an extra source of gravity that was affecting the orbit of Uranus. Okay, an extra source of gravity that was unaccounted for in the math. And so, these math whizzes, they sit down, crunch some numbers, do some calculations, looking at, star charts, diagrams, that sort of thing, and they're able to figure out, okay, that spot right there. They're not even looking at it through telescopes. They're just like, doing math, looking at star charts, that sort of thing. They figure, okay, that spot right there must be where the source of gravity is. So they tell their astronomers, look in that spot right there. Turn your telescopes to that spot right there. They turn their telescopes to that spot, bam, planet Neptune discovered, just like that. Okay? That was Newtonian physics. Okay? That was the laws of Isaac Newton that were used to discover the planet Neptune. That shit works. So again, anyone can get their own telescope, point it at the night sky, see the celestial objects for yourself. Okay? That said, there are some flat earthers, and there's different schools of thought amongst the flat earthers. I've noticed that they'll sometimes give different rebuttals to people's arguments against the flat earth. And sometimes you'll actually see like two contradictory conceptions of the flat earth come together. It's just like, it doesn't really work. But anyway, one of the explanations that I've seen for the sun, moon, stars, and the other planets is that they're projections. They're projections onto the sky dome, right? NASA is projecting these, I guess, holographic images or something like that, projecting them onto the sky dome, right? Now, one of the ideas I've seen this mix with is the idea that, well, the Bible, everything in there is true. Okay, well, here's the thing. If everything in the Bible is true, it says nothing about the sun, moon, and stars being projected onto the sky dome by NASA. Okay? Right? Let's face it. The sun, moon, and stars existed long before NASA came along. Unless you're one of the groups that thinks that all of history is a lie, which that exists. Right? Yeah, it's really sad, actually. If you're one of these, if you think that the Bible, if you think everything in the Bible is 100% true, and you think the sun, moon, and stars are projections onto the sky dome, created by NASA, those two don't go together, because according to the Bible, God created the sun, moon, and stars. Okay, He's the one who put them up there, right? Makes no mention of NASA doing it. You see how this doesn't really... So, in antiquity, our first historical arguments for a spheroid Earth come from the Greek philosophers. So they were noticing things like, if you watch a ship go across the sea, you see like the bottom of the ship kind of disappear below the horizon before they see the sail disappear, right? And if the Earth was flat, you wouldn't see that. What you'd see is you'd see the ship kind of getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappears from view. But no, what you see is this sort of sinking effect. It looks like it's sinking below the horizon. Now, if you're actually on one of these ships, what you'd see as you're approaching land is you'd see mountaintops coming up over the horizon, and then gradually you see more of the mountain, and then more of the landmass that those mountains are on. You see the cities and stuff like that. Okay. This is footage I came across on YouTube. You can see Toronto across this giant lake, Lake Ontario, I believe. Yeah, you can see the tops of buildings poking up over the horizon. You don't see the bottoms. You don't see any of the street activity or anything like that. It's all obscured beneath the curvature of the Earth. But flat earthers, of course, have rebuttals to these kinds of points. What I've seen in this kind of situation is, if you're looking at these buildings, you can see the tops of them, right? It's been pointed out by the flat earthers, well, if these buildings are really on a curved Earth, then you should see them sort of tilting away from you, right? Now, that sounds like good logic and all, but was there an actual experiment done to arrive at that conclusion? Is this person just kind of using their own personal logic? Or did they actually do an experiment to demonstrate that that is the case?
So, got a balloon, got a piece of black construction paper taped to it. What I want you guys to do is just kind of see, does it look like the construction paper is tilting as it goes over the horizon, or does it look like it's just kind of sinking? Obviously, it's going to look like it's tilting as it goes up. But we're talking about as it disappears behind the horizon. Does it look as though it's tilting? Or does it look as though it's just kind of sinking?
So I felt like that experiment went pretty well. It wasn't perfect, of course. I mean, a balloon, that's nowhere close to the size of the Earth, right? If this was perceived as a building, I mean, yeah, it's obviously that's nowhere near an accurate scale comparison. Which is why I actually thought about like going out and like getting this like giant ball for the experiment, but I decided just to test it out on the balloon and see if that worked out, and it did seem to work out pretty well, because it really just looked like it was sort of sinking into the horizon, right? But yeah, if you factor in the actual scales that we're dealing with, how gigantic the Earth is. If you look at pictures of the Earth from space, you can't see buildings on the Earth. Okay, you factor in those scales. It's completely asinine to suggest that you would notice a tilting effect to a building that is disappearing over the horizon.
Ramadan, you fast during the day and you get to eat at night. Okay, so it's 40 days of fasting. I think 40.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a long time.
Maybe it's not, whatever the number of days, you're fasting during the day when the sun is up, and then you get to eat at night. Well, it turns out, I was recently in Dubai, where they have the tallest building in the world, and I did a quick calculation, and I confirmed it with others there, that in fact, they print separate tables for residents at the top of this building, because the sun sets later if you are at the top of that building than if you are at the base, because that building, and you have it up there now, that's the actual tweet from the top. This building is 30% taller than what the World Trade Center was. It's crazy tall, and that's a picture I took while I was visiting Dubai. So the sun sets 2 minutes later for you at the top, because you're seeing that much farther over the Earth, curvature of the Earth. Yeah.
Well,
now, in the interest of not turning this video into a 2-hour-long documentary and moving on to other subjects I want to talk about, I'm not going to be addressing every single point that I've heard from the flat earthers. I really think that this video is probably sufficient enough response to that. Not that it's really the flat earthers I want to be responding to here. It's the people who might watch the videos that they make and start going, oh gee, that's a good point. I didn't think about it. No, it's not a good point. Okay, my final analysis of this flat earth furor is that the people who are putting forward this flat earth conspiracy theory, they're mostly coming from a religious context that views the Bible to be the infallible word of God. It's all 100% true, and they're pissed off about the findings of science that contradict their religious beliefs. Okay? They don't like that. I've actually heard these guys go on rants about, you know, the NASA evolutionists or something like that. You know, it's like, what the hell? But yeah. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up. Share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace. Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon. Today I'm going to be responding to a comment that was left on my video titled The Flat Earth Furor. As indicated by the title of this video, I have triggered the flat earthers, right? And they're letting me know that down in the comments section of that video. So I'm not going to be responding to all the comments that I got on that video in today's video. I'm planning to do more of these, so this is just part 1. There will be a part 2, part 3, yeah. So anyway, yeah, just starting with the first comment. This guy found it necessary to point out,
not all of flat earthers believe in the Bible.
Right, of course. Some of them believe in the Quran, right? I didn't say that all flat earthers believe in the Bible, did I? I think what I said was, that's right, apparently a good chunk of these flat earth conspiracy theorists are also with the camp that views the Bible to be the divinely inspired and inerrant word of God, and they think that everything in it is 100% true. A good chunk is what I said. I didn't say it was all of them. But he goes on to say,
for the statistics, there are more religious people who believe that the world is a ball than who believe that it's flat.
Right. I mean, I guess I just kind of figured that most people in general, whether religious or not, have been updated to the fact that the Earth is more of a ball than it is a flat disc.
Talking about compelling evidences that the religious people state from the Bible, that doesn't make them retards.
Then I guess it's a good thing that I didn't call anyone a retard in that video. I tend to think that name-calling, personal attacks, character assassination, it's not really the best way to make a persuasive argument.
You are generalizing the flat earth theory by mocking of it and not listening to all that debunk the fake space exploration.
You got me. I haven't listened to every single person out there who is debunking the fake space exploration. Way to go. You got a point. You got me. You fucking got me.
Instead of mocking people, try to find evidences that support your perfect sphere, Mr. Scientific.
Okay, first off, the word perfect was never uttered in that entire video. This is a blatant misrepresentation. And second, this is footage I came across on YouTube. You can see Toronto across this giant lake, Lake Ontario, I believe. Yeah, you can see the tops of buildings poking up over the horizon. You don't see the bottoms. You don't see any of the street activity or anything like that. It's all obscured beneath the curvature of the Earth. But flat earthers, of course, have rebuttals to these kinds of points. What I've seen in this kind of situation is, you know, if you're looking at these buildings, you can see the tops of them, right? It's been pointed out by the flat earthers, well, if these buildings are really on a curved Earth, then you should see them sort of tilting away from you, right? Now, that sounds like good logic and all, but was there an actual experiment done to arrive at that conclusion? Is this person just kind of using their own personal logic? Or did they actually do an experiment to demonstrate that that is the case?
So, got a balloon, got a piece of black construction paper taped to it. What I want you guys to do is just kind of see, does it look like the construction paper is tilting as it goes over the horizon, or does it look like it's just kind of sinking? Obviously, it's going to look like it's tilting as it goes up, but we're talking about as it disappears behind the horizon. Does it look as though it's tilting, or does it look as though it's just kind of sinking?
Gee, kind of seems to me like maybe I'm the guy that's actually substantiating his points with evidence.
Your Trident paper with the balloon thing, it's called static electricity. That gives one more thing to look out for. Gravity.
This guy, he was saying, here, I'll show you. Like, if the Earth is round, okay, then the people on the underside of the Earth, this is what this guy is saying, the people on the underside of the Earth would fall down, right? That's what would happen if the Earth is round, right? Let me get some static electricity going on here, right? Got a Trident wrapper. Check this out. Okay. Obviously, it's not that simple. People on the underside don't necessarily fall down. So, what's up? What's down? That's all relative. What's keeping humanity glued to the Earth is gravity. And gravity is not just something made up by Isaac Newton, right? You know, the laws of Newton, the reason we call them laws is because of how well tested they are. And then I talked about how after the discovery of the planet Uranus through a telescope, we had to use Newtonian physics to find an extra source of gravity that was affecting Uranus's orbit, and that's how we discovered the planet Neptune. So I talked about static electricity, and I did talk about gravity.
The comment you left is freaking odd, dude.
Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I do videos on all sorts of subjects, but if you're interested in watching more videos on science and spirituality and you want to watch me do more responses to the flat earthers, then you should tune in on Sundays. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you for watching. Peace, and have a good one. Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon. Last week I posted a video called I Triggered the Flat Earthers, which was basically a response to a comment that I received on a previous video called the Flat Earth Furor. Today I'm going to be addressing another comment that I received on that video.
Keep seeking, and you will find the truth. Einstein said science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind.
Science without religion is lame? Personally, I prefer the new science perspective.
Science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can fuck off.
You sound like a narcissistic, pompous ass clown, to be honest.
That reminds me of something that I mentioned in the video I posted last week. I tend to think that name-calling, personal attacks, character assassination, it's not really the best way to make a persuasive argument. It certainly doesn't do anything to substantiate your perspectives, nor does it do anything to invalidate mine.
Did you know Einstein proved that gravity bends light and makes flat large mass anomalies appear spherical?
No, I didn't know that. And probably because there's all sorts of shit that's wrong with what you just said. First off, Einstein really didn't prove much in the way of anything. Einstein didn't even do experiments. What Einstein did was write equations and make predictions. It was other scientists who put those predictions to the test. Second, you're here. You're on the Earth, and you're looking out at the sun through a telescope. In 1911, Einstein predicted that gravity from the sun could actually bend light. So, a star that's technically behind the sun could be perceived by an observer to be right here. So the sun is such a major source of gravity that it actually warps the space-time around it. That's why rays of light are being bent by the sun's gravity. Now, I want to make sure you really understand what's going on here, okay? The space-time surrounding the sun is being curved, okay? It's being physically curved. So the light occupying that space is being curved. The light is being curved by the warped space-time. the light is being curved by the curvature of space. There's an actual warping, an actual curvature of space. Now, I'm glad that you're not one of these flat earthers that denies the existence of gravity, but I want you to notice that there was no mention there of anything flat being perceived as a sphere. Where did you get that idea from? And what were you trying to insinuate with that? Are you trying to say that our space photos that show a spheroid Earth that's just optical illusion? It's actually a flat disk we're looking at? It just looks spherical because light is being bent? It's pretty clear you don't even get how this stuff works. But hey, gotta give you kudos for your alternative flat Earth theory. This is different than the one that I'm used to, which says that these space photos are faked by NASA.
Wake up, science priest, laughing my ass off. Even the most brilliant scientists are seldom willing to accept the simplest of truths, if they be such to contradict what they learned as students, taught as professors, and hold as sacred ancestral treasures.
Yep, you gotta figure it out. Scientists, they don't ever do experiments. They just kind of regurgitate stuff that was taught to them. They never test it out for themselves. Oh, wait.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. So I am now going to make a wild, way out, extraordinary claim. The world is round. See, it looks like a table or a board. Now, once in a while, you might see mountains or hills, but those are just like little bumps on what looks like a flat Earth. Well, here's what happened. People noticed that the place that we seem to be living would every now and then cast a shadow on the moon. And when it did, that shadow was always round. Now, the only shape we know of that always casts a round shadow is a ball. It's our curvature of the Earth horizon model of science. And this blue stuff is like the ocean. And this boat, well, it's like a boat. Anyway, watch as ships sail away. They don't disappear all at once. No, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears. Now, ships came back. They didn't fall off a table. So people realized that the world is curved. I mean, it's a big curve, but it's curved. So, the process of testing claims, the world is flat, the world is round, is what we call science. Now, if you have a claim that can't be tested, that's what we call pseudoscience. The difference between pseudoscience and regular science is whether or not you can test it. The flat Earth, well, that didn't stand up to tests. The round Earth did. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. The world is round. I'm out of here.
Now, if you disagree with Bill Nye that the flat Earth model doesn't hold up to tests, then do a test. Come on YouTube, provide a demonstration for everyone, show people the evidence that the Earth is flat, and validate the evidence for the curvature of the Earth with better evidence for a flat Earth. It's going to be more convincing than coming into my comments section with historically inaccurate details, calling me names, attacking my personality. That just makes your position look weak. You don't win the argument that way. You lose.
Go back to your drawing board, science priest. Stop being like a religious priest and ignore what you can't explain.
Just what am I ignoring? And which is it? Am I a science priest or a religious priest? Make up your mind. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, then subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I do videos on all sorts of subjects. But for those of you interested in subjects like science and spirituality, and you want to see me do another video addressing the flat earthers, then tune in on Sundays. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you for watching. Peace, and have a good one. Hey guys, welcome back to The Mind of Brandon. Today I'm going to be responding to a couple more flat earthers who left comments on my video called The Flat Earth Furor. Here's the first comment.
Those who think they know everything are the ones who know the least, and those who know the most are the ones who realize how much there is left to learn.
Then I must be one of the ones who knows the most, because I am quite aware that there is plenty left to learn. There's always more to learn. That's one of the things that I found really interesting while researching all sorts of different subjects. It's like each subject kind of branches out into all sorts of other subject matters. It's like, oh, I got to learn about that and that and that and that, right? It's pretty fascinating, actually. So maybe some of these flat earthers should follow my lead instead of thinking that they've got it all figured out because they watched some amateur documentary on YouTube that was putting forward some unsubstantiated and unrealistic alternative explanation for the evidence for a ball-shaped Earth.
Also, nobody thinks NASA is projecting the planets, sun, and moon. Some flat earthers believe the planets, and maybe the moon, are holograms, but not by NASA, but by whomever built the flat earth and dome, supposedly.
Oh, well, excuse me. I guess it's technically possible I may have misunderstood something, which I would hope would be understandable since they're saying shit like, oh, NASA's lying about this and NASA's hoaxing that.
And making fun of people for their beliefs because they're different, not mainstream, is hardly an argument.
Then I guess it's a good thing that my arguments are better than that, because of course I did actually provide evidence for the curvature of the Earth in that video. So, what's the evidence for a flat Earth? Can you even think of any? I mean, surely, somewhere in one of those YouTube videos uploaded by someone, surely somewhere in one of these flat earth videos where someone is so sure, they're just so certain that NASA has hoaxed these space photos of a spheroid Earth. They're just so sure that the Earth is flat. Surely one of these videos must have provided some semblance of evidence to substantiate the flat Earth. There's got to be something, right? Take for example, let's see, when they try to explain the shadow that's cast upon the moon during a lunar eclipse, right? So Aristotle notices, okay, well, you know, there's this curved-looking shadow being cast upon the moon during a lunar eclipse. Here's the moon, here's the Earth, here's the sun. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Okay, that makes perfect sense. It works with the evidence that's actually available to us. Okay, it works. But you start looking at flat earther alternative explanations. Oh, that shadow that's being cast on the moon, that's not Earth's shadow. No, that's just part of the holographic projection. What? What? Where is the evidence that the moon is just some fucking holographic projection? What substantiates that? Another alternative explanation I've come across is that the shadow being cast on the moon is that of an anti-moon. Yes, there's this invisible anti-moon, it's not visible to the naked eye, but it casts a shadow on the moon during the lunar eclipse. Just one problem. There's not one shred of evidence for this anti-moon. No evidence at all that it exists. So you can say, oh, but look at the shadow. No, we've already got a good explanation for that. Here's the moon, here's the earth, here's the sun, ray of light from the sun. Oh, blocking out. Oh, what do you know? Makes perfect sense with the evidence that's actually available to us that curved shadow we see on the moon during a lunar eclipse is the shadow of the curved Earth. Makes perfect sense with the evidence that's actually available to us. If you're convinced of a flat Earth based on alternative explanations that are not substantiated with evidence, come on! Come on! So no, I'm not just making fun of something because it's different and not mainstream. The reason that the flat Earth conspiracy theory is a laughable idea is because it's going up against that which is substantiated by compelling evidence with an alternative explanation that is not substantiated with compelling evidence. It's just kind of rejecting the evidence that's available for the round Earth in favor of the flat Earth hypothesis that isn't substantiated with evidence. Do you not see how that makes it a ridiculous conspiracy theory?
And it's clear you don't understand the laws of perspective.
Can you be any more vague? What is it I'm not understanding? You don't even go into specifics. Makes it kind of sound like maybe you don't understand it.
Not saying the Earth is flat, not saying it's round. I'm just saying you've got a lot to learn.
Right, of course. I think we've already talked about that, though. There's always a lot to learn. Yes, of course. Let's move on to the next comment.
You've got a lot to learn.
No, Jesus Christ. Are you people ever going to teach me something, or just going to make yourselves look ignorant by telling me I've got a lot to learn and then go into no detail whatsoever? Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. So have a good one guys, and peace. Hey guys, welcome back to The Mind Brandon. As indicated by the title of this video, I'm challenging the flat earthers to provide actual evidence that the earth is flat. So a few weeks ago, I started watching another one of those flat earther videos while trying to come up with an idea for my own video. And I noticed early on in this video, the flat earther was actually saying something that I agreed with. He's kind of showing some Bible passages that, kind of put forward this idea that the earth is flat. And, that's a point that I've made, is that the people who wrote the Bible were, in fact, flat earthers. But whereas flat earthers will tend to point that out to give credit to the idea that the earth is flat, I point that out to discredit the idea that everything in the Bible is 100% true. Because if the Bible's putting forward this idea that the earth is flat, then obviously it can't be 100% true, right? Well, that's logic that's not going to work on a flat earther. The next thing I saw in this flat earther's video was a world map resembling a flat earth map that contained a whole bunch of extra continents beyond the ice wall of Antarctica. The flat earther claims that this is a 1,000-year-old map originating from a Japanese Buddhist temple. So I went ahead and left a comment saying, a 1,000-year-old map that shows America, I call bullshit. That map is not 1,000 years old. Then this other guy came along and said,
I call BS on your face. Looking like a Hindu Muppet, laughing my fucking ass off.
A Hindu Muppet? What the fuck? What? Alright, notice how instead of trying to make a case for this being a 1,000-year-old map, he just attacks my physical appearance. Yep. So I told him, wow, you just proved the flat earth with that comment. Oh wait, no you didn't. So he tells me,
Okay, then hit me with your best debunk of flat earth.
so instead of even attempting to make any kind of case whatsoever for the flat earth, he switches the goalposts and he challenges me to debunk the flat earth. Okay, totally fine with that. So I directed him to my video, The Flat Earth Furor, and in response, I got hit with a barrage of different comments from this guy, not only on the initial video where I met this guy, but also on a couple of my own videos. So I'm going to be spending the duration of the rest of this video responding to this guy's barrage of comments.
Riddle me this. The moon, orbiting Earth while it travels at 66,600 miles per hour, reaches the backside of Earth. Now in order to get back in front of the Earth, it would now have to move much faster than the Earth to gain its new moon.
So I'm getting the impression that this guy is baffled by a speed comparison of, how fast is the Earth going around the sun versus how fast is the moon going around the Earth, right? So you look that up, and basically it comes down to, well, the Earth is traveling at roughly 67,000 miles an hour as it orbits the sun, whereas the moon is traveling at roughly only 2,300 miles an hour as it orbits the Earth. And so this guy seems to kind of be in the context of thought of, well, wait a minute, how is the moon, which is significantly slower than the Earth, how that's supposed to get around the Earth if the Earth is going faster than the moon is? Now, someone already left a pretty good response to this down in the comment section, but I got the impression that the flat earther kind of missed the point, so I will now attempt to clarify the situation. Imagine for a moment that you're on the back of a long bus that's driving down the freeway at 60 miles an hour, which of course is way too fast for someone outside to catch up with on foot. Now, let's say that someone in the back drops a fart, and you decide to relocate to the front of the bus. So if the bus is driving at 60 miles an hour, how much faster than the midsection of the bus do you have to travel in order to get from the back end of the bus to the front? Now, I don't really expect you to do any math here. The point is that even if the bus is moving at 60 miles an hour, it's totally possible for someone that is actually on the bus to walk from the back to the front. You don't even need to speed walk to do it. This is because the bus is carrying its occupants just as the Earth's gravitational field carries the moon. So relativity is an important factor. Are we positioned relative to space within the bus or relative to space outside the bus? Is the moon positioned relative to space within Earth's gravitational field, or is it positioned relative to space beyond Earth's gravitational field? If the moon existed outside of the Earth's gravitational field and orbited the sun at 2,300 miles an hour, then the Earth, orbiting the sun at 67,000 miles an hour, would whiz right past the moon without any hope of the moon catching up to the Earth. But since the moon occupies space within the Earth's gravitational field, Earth's gravity is capable of carrying the moon around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour, while the moon goes around the Earth at only 2,300 miles an hour.
It was great to watch you demonstrate static electricity as a pulling force, as that very action along with electromagnetism are proven while gravity remains to exist only in theory or convenient explanation.
Well, if that's your attitude, then it sounds like you're not even acquainted with the most up-to-date scientific understanding of what gravity is, which of course we get from Albert Einstein. He understood gravity as the curvature that is done into space by an object of mass. Now, to be fair, when it was first explained to me in that way, I was a little bit confused, because, you know, I wasn't used to thinking of gravity as the curvature of space. I was used to thinking of it as a force that pulled things down to the earth, right? But that's not what Einstein taught. Here we have a couple of M&Ms that are occupying space within my solid wooden floor, and here we have a big fat wooden Buddha being placed right between them. Notice that there's no obvious force attracting the M&Ms any closer to the Buddha though. No obvious gravitational field, there's no obvious electromagnetic field that is attracting the M&Ms any closer to the Buddha. But what if we modify the conditions of the experiment? What if we put these objects on a different kind of space? Here the M&Ms are occupying a thinner, lighter, more flexible space in the form of white Christmas tissue paper, which is suspended by several stacks of books, so there is some space underneath this tissue paper through which objects can move, a space that can be occupied by matter. And here we have again the big fat wooden Buddha being placed between the M&Ms. Hey, look at that. They just gravitated toward the big fat wooden Buddha. So my question to you is, was it the Buddha's electromagnetism that attracted the M&Ms to it? Or was it the mass of the Buddha weighing down on the space that the M&Ms occupied, causing curvature within that space, or in other words, a gravitational field? Is that what caused the M&Ms to fall toward the Buddha? Now, everyone watching this knows it was not the Buddha's electromagnetism that pulled the M&Ms in toward the Buddha. The Buddha caused curvature to the space that the M&Ms occupied. That caused the M&Ms to fall toward the Buddha. They fell toward the Buddha because of the gravitational field generated by the weight of the Buddha's mass. So don't tell me gravity is just a theory. I just demonstrated it to you. I just showed you the generation of a gravitational field. Now I know some of you are thinking, well, wait a minute. Part of the reason that Buddha is weighing down on that piece of paper is because of the Earth's gravity. It's the Earth's gravitational field that's causing the Buddha to fall toward the Earth. And that is correct. So, even if you don't subscribe to Einstein's understanding of gravity, if you don't believe that massive objects can curve the vacuum of space, causing other objects to fall toward them, you have to admit, stuff still falls to the Earth. If you don't subscribe to Einstein's understanding of gravity, then you're left with some other understanding of gravity.
This is called gravity.
Now, if you're a flat earther who doesn't believe in gravity, you might say, oh, it's electromagnetism that's pulling the Buddha down, right? I have a magnet right here, okay? And look, it sticks to this knife, right? It sticks to the knife just fine. What about to the Buddha? No, not a particularly magnetically attractive object there. No, we have evidence that electromagnetism is not what's pulling this down.
Lunar eclipse? Come on, man. Earth is a few times bigger than the moon. Its shadow would engulf it if that were the case. Think logically, Muppet baby.
Okay, the Earth's shadow does engulf the moon during a lunar eclipse. That's why it's called an eclipse. You see the Earth's curved shadow gradually move across the moon until it engulfs it. You're telling me to think logically?
You could not prove axial rotation, nor the source of gravity or its components. Only effects that could be attributed to magnetism in an electric universe.
Well, I already talked about gravity versus electromagnetism, but I did neglect to discuss the Earth rotating on its axis. It's kind of ironic that you bring this up so close to the winter solstice and the changing season, which of course, are indications of the Earth rotating on its axis. Here in my neck of the woods, we of course recently had a winter solstice. On the other side of the world, they recently had the summer solstice. Emphasis on the other side of the world.
Galaxies do not abide by the laws of physics your videos claim, thus the invention of a new theory, an invisible dark matter tethering the vicious spin of galaxies, keeping them whole or together.
Well, if the laws of physics you're referring to are Newtonian physics, then it's certainly right to point out the shortcomings that Newtonian physics has. They work pretty well within their own domain, that is the domain of what could be considered to be normal space. Normal not necessarily meaning that it's more common. It's not more common throughout the universe, but it is the kind of space that we are used to. It's the kind of space that we exist in. And that kind of space really probably only makes up about 5% of the universe. 25% of the universe would be that dark matter that you mentioned. 70% would be dark energy. What's all this dark stuff? Well, what that basically means is we don't know what it is, okay? Actually, the planet Neptune, once upon a time, would have qualified as dark matter back when we were detecting its gravity, but we hadn't actually yet identified the source of that gravity. We hadn't seen the planet. But, we have, of course, since then discovered Neptune, obviously, right? And so, Newtonian physics works pretty well when, making predictions of, where is this planet going to be at what time, right? Works pretty well for that. You can use it to predict, here's where the planet's going to be, point your telescope there, and, the calculation winds up being pretty close to accurate. It's usually off by like a degree or two, maybe even 3, 4, or 5 degrees, something like that. It's usually off by a little bit, but it's close enough, right? And so this is why there's kind of been this attitude that Newtonian physics works pretty well within its own domain, okay? It works for most of the planets in our solar system. Why do I say most? Is there an exception? Yes! The planet Mercury, the planet closest to the Sun, because the space in the immediate proximity of the Sun is actually especially distorted by the immense gravity of the Sun. Okay, so Mercury doesn't exist in what we would consider to be normal space. Okay, and that's where Newtonian physics fails us, when it's that close to a major source of gravity, a source of gravity as massive as the Sun. And this is where Einsteinian physics comes in to save the day, because before Albert Einstein came along, we had a false dark matter explanation for what was going on with Mercury's orbit, why is it so weird. And so we had this hypothetical planet that we dreamed up called Vulcan, right? And so people were claiming this planet Vulcan for, being an extra source of gravity that's affecting the orbit of Mercury, right? Well, turns out that Vulcan doesn't exist, right? Right. Einstein comes along with his theory of general relativity, talking about space as a sort of fabric. It's made out of this stuff that can be distorted, bent, folded, curved, right? And that's where we get this idea that gravity is the curvature of space-time. And when we're dealing with an object that's such a massive source of gravity, like the Sun, then space in its immediate proximity is going to be more distorted than it would be in more distant portions of the solar system.
It is convenient to invent forces when an answer would threaten physics as they stand. So the logic is, let's not reassess our belief, let's invent 80% of the substance of the universe.
Let's not reassess our beliefs? Look who's talking! You're the one that's reverting back to the Earth is flat. I mean, come on, man. We let go of Isaac Newton's teachings where they weren't working for us, and we accepted Einstein into the fold. Right? Evolution, Big Bang, the Earth is round. Scientists have constantly been reassessing beliefs. This is why they don't promote making sacrifices to the gods. Just pray and everything will be alright. This is why we're moving past the ancient folk ways of doing things. Are we coming up with hypothetical dark matter and dark matter particles that may or may not exist? Sure, and that certainly didn't work out too well with the planet Vulcan, but it did work pretty well with the planet Neptune. Gotta keep that in mind. Let's say it turns out that all of this hypothetical dark matter, all these dark matter particles, let's just say it turns out that none of that exists. We're wrong about all of it. Does that somehow invalidate all the evidence for a round Earth? Does that somehow provide evidence that the Earth is flat? No! No, it fucking doesn't!
Try holding a feather beside the largest building in your town and see if the mass of the larger object draws it in.
Well, I predict that this experiment would have about the same results as when I set the fat wooden Buddha down on the solid wooden floor next to the M&Ms, and the M&Ms were not attracted to the mass of the Buddha. We had to alter the conditions of the experiments. We had to change the space that we place these objects in. So yeah, I think that this feather experiment would go down about like when we had these objects on the solid wooden floor. But the only way to know for sure is to actually do the experiment. And that went pretty much like predicted. Just as the M&Ms were not attracted to the Buddha when it was sitting on the solid wooden floor, the feather was not attracted to the building that was sitting on the solid earth, which of course is the source of gravity that both the Buddha and the feather fell toward.
Pictures of the Earth from space? Smeh! You're indeed far gone. You seem to have a bit of sense. Have you spent 1 minute researching the photographs of Earth from space? Have you questioned any of the moon missions?
Well, let me put it this way. When we compare the claim that we've actually been to the moon versus the claim that the moon missions were faked, right? It seems more likely to me that we would have actually been to the moon. When you consider the present state of science and technology, the fact that when you look up at the moon, it's right there. You can look up and see detail on the surface of the moon. That's how close it is, right? It's not one of those distant, twinkling stars or whatever. No, it's right there, right? So, given the present state of science and technology, it'd be downright odd if we haven't been to the moon by now. And, I would say that if someone's saying that the moon missions were faked, that NASA hoaxed the whole thing, well, NASA is innocent until proven guilty. I'd say that's a pretty extraordinary claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So if you're saying that NASA faked that, you got to make a compelling case that NASA faked it.
Have you wondered why gravity has been a dominant factor in science for over 350 years with no proof of existence, origin, or makeup? Theoretic science is what you are left with. A black hole, dark matter, etc. only exist in theory, gravity included. Such an ever-present force should be as easy to find. Hell to hatness as electricity, yet it hasn't because it is bunk.
Well, that was not entirely coherent, but he seems to be coming back to some things that we've already discussed, and we already discussed evidence for gravity and what that is more specifically. He's of course bringing up dark matter again. We talked about that. So yeah, he seems to be kind of hung up on some things that he doesn't seem to really understand.
How did the Apollo astronauts escape low Earth orbit and travel through the radiation of the Van Allen belts?
Well, my understanding is that they did it with a strategically timed and strategically navigated, well-armored high-velocity rocket. Basically, there are patches within this belt that are more heavily radiated than other parts, so that does allow for the possibility to navigate around the more heavily radiated parts. They're still technically being exposed to radiation, but not for very long, since it is a high-velocity rocket. And of course, it is well armored against this radiation. So while they were exposed to radiation, and it was enough to give them, they did have some symptoms of this exposure, like there's visual symptoms. They have flashes in their eyes or something like that. But if I understand correctly, no one's skin started burning, no one got sick to their stomach. So they were exposed to radiation, but it was, you know, an amount that was considered acceptable considering what they were trying to do. They're trying to get to the moon. That requires you navigate a course through this radiation belt.
Your example of static electricity as a pulling force did in no way explain gravity, yet it did prove how other forces such as electromagnetism that are detectable and understood can be accountable for the pulling of particles and all matter.
He's of course talking about the demonstration where I rubbed the balloon against my shirt to generate static electricity and then use the Trident wrapper stuck to the bottom of the balloon, right? And of course, I wasn't doing that demonstration to explain gravity. What I was doing is showing that it is possible for something to stick to the underside because, you know, I was responding to this idea, well, if the Earth is round, then people on the other side of the Earth are going to fall down. Later, when I started actually explaining some of the evidence for gravity, I talked about how we used Neptune's gravity to find planet Neptune. We found Neptune's gravity before we found planet Neptune because it was having gravitational effects on the planet Uranus.
What is the makeup of gravity?
Gravity is understood to be made up of these teeny tiny little particles that we call gravitons. Right? Now, particles, of course, more technically, are really little waves of energy. Right? You got to keep in mind that at every single little point in space, there's an underlying fundamental field of energy. The various elementary particles, the forces, those are all just different manifestations of this underlying energy that is in every point of space. Finally, he posts a couple links to a couple of different videos showing a rare type of lunar eclipse that he wants me to explain. It's confusing to him because a lunar eclipse is supposed to be when the Earth comes between the Sun and the Moon, and the Earth's shadow engulfs the Moon. Yet, in these videos, the Sun and Moon are both visible in the sky. The Sun appears to be rising up over Earth's eastern horizon, and the Moon appears to be setting over Earth's western horizon. So, you'd expect Earth's shadow to be moving across the Moon from bottom up, but during this rare event, known as a selenelion, the Earth's shadow is actually moving across the Moon from top to bottom. So, what the hell is going on here? Well, the guy in one of the linked videos actually tries to explain it.
Across the Moon, even though the Sun's coming up over here, and that must be because of the Moon's rotation around the Earth. It's moving farther up, even though the Sun's light is actually coming from over there. It's actually coming underneath the Earth. So if you imagine, the Sun is here, the Earth is here, and the Moon is back here, and this light was coming under the Earth, but the Moon must be rotating around even though we're turning, so it looks like the Moon is going down. It's kind of an optical illusion. It's pretty cool.
Don't get me wrong, that explanation really doesn't go far enough into the detail, so I'll go ahead and clarify what's actually going on here. Basically, the Sun and Moon are not actually where they appear to be. This is due to the effects of atmospheric light refraction.
Now this is very interesting. You get to see the sunrise before the sun actually rises. You know what happens? Earth's atmosphere has different layers. And also, the optical densities of these layers decreases as you move away from the Earth's surface. That is with increasing height. So, what happens is, just before sunrise, before the sun reaches the horizon, the sunlight enters obliquely into the atmosphere. It gets refracted through the atmospheric layers. Now this refraction causes the light rays to bend. So the sunlight actually reaches the Earth's surface in a curved path. Now, what happens from the point of view of an observer? Following the path of the light rays entering the eyes, the observer actually sees the sun slightly above its actual position.
Now what I've got here, this is a light box, so it's basically a box with a slit, so a single beam of light can come out here, and the light is entering this plastic rectangle here, and what's happening is the light, as it enters, it's forced to slow down, and because it's forced to slow down, it will bend towards the normal, and then as it leaves out here, it actually runs parallel with the light that enters, but it's actually been shifted up. And if I lift the block up, you should see, you can see it's moving. But this is what's happening here. The beam is going in here, it's being bent towards the normal, moving up here, then as the beam of light exits the block, the effect is reversed and the beam continues in the same direction.
So during the selenium, just as the sun appears to be coming over the horizon when it's actually below it, the moon appears to be over the horizon after it's already descended below it. So you might need to keep in mind that at sunrise, the sun is not actually literally rising up above the Earth's horizon. The sun does not actually come up and then go down. It just looks that way because, of course, the Earth is rotating on its axis. The moon, on the other hand, actually is going around the Earth. So I'm hoping that everyone noticed that at no point in any of that flat earther's comments did he even attempt to make any kind of case whatsoever for a flat Earth. He seemed mainly just to be denying science and making arguments from ignorance. Do let me know if you notice that down in the comment section below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and share it with other people. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And here is an outtake for you guys. What's so funny? It's funny how long you've been there. Just it's funny turn on the camera and see your mug there. This is like the noisiest door ever. Yeah, there should be some WD-40 around. Something. I should make it easier to sneak up on him. You should. Are you recording? It is recording. This is an outtake. Oh yeah? Whip it out. The camera. Holy shit, your eye's red. It's been that way for a while.
Alright. Flat earthers. Say hello to my little friend. Oh, yeah. Ooh. Your virginal butthole is so tight, flat earther. Mm. Yeah. Ooh. Mm. God. That was fast. I give you credit, flat earther.
Wow.
The Earth isn't flat.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon. As indicated by the title of this video, another flat earther fails to provide evidence that the Earth is flat. So last week I uploaded a video challenging flat earthers to provide actual evidence for a flat Earth. And I got a comment on that video from a flat earther who just called me a parrot. Right, so, you know, I kind of pointed out that they didn't actually provide any evidence that the Earth was flat, and I asked them to do so, and here is the response that they gave me.
Distances seen that should not be able to be viewed with the curvature, we are told. Ships do not go over the horizon, as we have heard. High altitude pictures and videos that show the horizon flat. But I'm sure you've heard all of these before.
So hopefully everyone noticed that the response I got from this guy was a bunch of unsubstantiated claims. He didn't like provide any links, you know, to any footage, you know, showing the footage that he's talking about or anything like that. You know, he's not backing anything up. So I told him, you're gonna have to elaborate. What distance is seen that shouldn't be able to be viewed with the curvature we're told? When you say ships do not go over the horizon, what do you base that off of? When you say high-altitude pictures and videos that show a flat horizon, where are these pictures and videos? And what altitudes are they at? Because I've seen high-altitude pictures and videos demonstrating a curved ball-shaped Earth. It's just that flat earthers say they're faked by NASA. Such allegations made against NASA should be substantiated with evidence, or else they are baseless. So he told me,
You are complicating everything that I stated.
No, I'm not. I asked you for evidence for a flat Earth, and then you responded with claims that need to be substantiated with evidence. Like I already asked you, what distances are we seeing that we shouldn't be able to see if the Earth is a ball? Is there some flat earther that went out to the East Coast of the United States and got some footage of Mount Everest, pointing their telescope out across the ocean? When we say that ships don't really go over the horizon, what do you base that off of? The claims that you are making require evidence to substantiate them.
There are plenty of videos on these subjects.
Well, that's great. I guess it shouldn't be that hard then for you to name a couple, or at least provide links or something. Is that really asking so much?
It's not my responsibility to show you everything.
I'm not holding you accountable for everything. I'm holding you accountable for substantiating the very few claims that you made down in my comment section.
When I heard about Flat Earth, I reviewed every subject that I could. When you weigh the evidence that is out there, we have been fooled for a long time.
What evidence? You haven't provided any. So far, it's just out there. Come on, man. Do better than that.
You have the information, you have internet. Research more about how the Earth is flat and not so much on debunking videos.
Actually, I've been watching more flat earther videos than I have been watching videos that debunk them. When I decided that I wanted to do videos on this subject, when I started doing my research, the first research that I did was into the history of, discovering, evidence for the round Earth. Okay, so I wasn't like watching debunking videos. I was watching, videos on the history of, how we found evidence that the Earth is round. And so I learned about how, ancient people looked up and they saw the Earth's curved shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse, or how they watched ships at sea and how they'd disappear below the horizon, bottom first, then the sail, right? Or if they're on one of those ships approaching dry land, they'd see the tops of mountains come up over the horizon before the rest of the mountain and before the dry land that the mountains are on. Now, it didn't take too long to find flat earther rebuttals to these pieces of evidence for a round Earth, but these rebuttals weren't actually substantiated with evidence. They were unsubstantiated claims, saying, "Oh, well, that curved shadow that you see on the moon, well, that's just part of the hologram. The moon is a hologram. It's a holographic projection that's put there by NASA or the creator or whoever, right? Someone put this holographic moon up there, and so the phases that we see, that's all part of the holographic projection. The curved shadow during the lunar eclipse, that's all part of the projection." Okay, where's the evidence that substantiates this? This is just some alternative explanation for the curved shadow that we're seeing on the moon that comes with no evidence to back it up whatsoever. Meanwhile, when you factor in where the Earth is relative to the Sun and the Moon, the idea that it's the Earth's shadow moving across the Moon makes complete sense with the evidence that's actually available to us. Now, when I got this comment talking about how ships don't really go over the horizon, I went ahead and looked that up on YouTube, to see if I could find flat earther videos explaining that, and I was successful. It was not at all hard to find it. The YouTube user Juranism uploaded a video called "Boats Over the Curve 100% Debunked, Flat Earth Confirmed." Juranism's video shows footage from another video that was uploaded by a globe earther who was repeating the boat experiment that the ancients used to identify curvature of the Earth. According to Juranism, though, this isn't good evidence for the curvature of Earth because there's a mirage that's distorting the image. Supposedly, the boat disappearing over the curvature is an optical illusion. And so, where we perceive the waterline to be, that's not where it actually is. Now, if his point was that we perceive the waterline to be here, but it's actually down here, I'd think he was making a good point. But he's not saying that. He's saying that the actual waterline is here, which means that the boat is still partially obscured by the waterline, hence the perception of evidence for curvature. Yet he seems to think he's somehow debunking the curvature. Now, to be fair, it occurs to me that he might just be using some of the wrong words when he explains what's going on. He might actually be making a good point and just explaining it wrong. I mean, what if the perceived waterline is the actual waterline, and what's obscuring the boat is the distortion appearing over the horizon? If that's what he meant, then he's making a good point. But let's keep in mind that this distortion is caused by certain atmospheric conditions that are changeable, and the curvature is still evident even when there's less distortion.
Anyone can lie to you. Personally, I am tired of all the lies.
Then don't tell people that the evidence supports a flat Earth when it supports a spheroid Earth.
If you are too lazy to do the work, then you deserve to be lied to.
Too lazy to do the work? I'm the one that's making videos, man. Let's look at your YouTube channel. Hey, look at that. Another faceless commenter with no uploads whatsoever. How the hell did you get 13 subscribers? Whatever. Apparently your idea of work is watching a bunch of flat earth conspiracy theory videos. Look at this shit. Water doesn't flow uphill, and then it shows the Nile, which of course moves downhill as it travels north, because our ball-shaped Earth is a hilly ball-shaped Earth with ups and downs all over the place no matter what hemisphere you're on. Is it really that hard for people to reconcile how that works? But apparently I'm the lazy one, guys, because he couldn't be bothered to take the time to substantiate his claims. I gotta do all the work myself, so that makes me the lazy one.
Man, I thought you were supposed to be smart. Laugh out loud.
So in response to me asking this guy to back up his claims, he's basically decided, I don't wanna, right? And he's resorted to attacking me personally, right? Insinuating that I'm not very smart, calling me lazy, right? And this, of course, does not provide any evidence whatsoever that the Earth is flat. So, flat earthers, what is the actual evidence that the Earth is flat?
Oh my god, the Earth is flat!
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon. As indicated by the title of this video, more flat earthers fail to provide evidence that the Earth is flat. Now to recap, in previous videos I have challenged the flat earthers to provide actual evidence for a flat Earth. Now I have already addressed some of their responses, but today I'm going to be addressing more flat earther responses. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and do a little bit of a survey over some of the evidence that has been presented for a ball-shaped Earth. And I just want to kind of look at how that evidence does against the rebuttals that we see from the flat earther community. One of the earliest arguments made for a ball-shaped Earth was the curved shadow that the Earth cast on the moon during a lunar eclipse. Now, the very first rebuttal that I heard about from the modern flat earther community is that this curved shadow that we're seeing on the moon during a lunar eclipse, that's not the Earth's shadow, that's the shadow from an invisible anti-moon. There's this invisible anti-moon that is casting this curved shadow on the visible moon. Now, what I want to point out here is that this invisible anti-moon explanation is really only an alternative explanation that is not actually corroborated with any evidence. We don't have evidence for an invisible anti-moon, right? That's what's casting this shadow. I mean, if you guys disagree, feel free to leave comments down below directing me to that evidence. But, you know, so far as I am aware, we don't actually have evidence for an invisible anti-moon. So it really is only an alternative explanation that's substantiated by nothing. That being said, the flat earther community has different schools of thought, and so they will have different rebuttals to the same piece of evidence. Another rebuttal that I've come across is this idea that the moon is a holographic projection. It's just a hologram being projected onto the sky dome. And so the curved shadow that we see on the moon during a lunar eclipse, well, that's just part of the projection. Okay, again, where is the evidence to substantiate this? There is no evidence that the moon is just a holographic projection. If you disagree, feel free to go into the comments section and direct me to where that evidence is. At the present time, I have not seen any evidence that the moon is just a holographic projection. Okay, now with that being said, it's totally fair and reasonable to ask, okay, what is the evidence that this curved shadow we're seeing on the moon during a lunar eclipse is coming from the Earth? Where's the evidence that the Earth is the source of that shadow? What is the evidence to substantiate this idea that Earth has come between the sun and the moon, and so that's why we're seeing that curved shadow on the moon? Okay, totally fair and reasonable question. That being said, it's also not too hard to put together that really all you got to do here is, you know, watch the movements of the sun and the moon, pay attention to how much time it takes the sun to go like that, how much time it takes for it to reappear after it has disappeared, you know, how long does it take for it to appear on this horizon after it's gone down at that horizon, right? And so you can actually use this data to make predictions about where the sun is when you cannot see it. And let's face it, when the sun is no longer visible to the inhabitants of one part of the world, there's another part of the world where it's still visible. And this, of course, allows us to test the validity of our predictions. We're actually really good at accurately predicting where the sun is going to be. Granted, the modern flat Earth model has been developed to be used in the same way, but when we factor in the movement of all the other stars, and the fact that there is one set of stars viewable from the northern hemisphere, and a different set of stars viewable from the southern hemisphere that are moving in the opposite direction, that's when the flat Earth model collapses. So, just like that, this alternative model presented by the flat earthers is debunked. It's invalidated by the actual evidence that is actually available to us. And thus, if we return to our original piece of evidence that was under dispute, the idea that the Earth is passing between the sun and moon during a lunar eclipse, and thus the idea that Earth is the source of the curved shadow on the moon, is corroborated with the evidence that is actually available to us, while the invisible anti-moon and the holographic moon remain unsubstantiated. But the most obvious evidence for the ball-shaped Earth is, of course, the space photos demonstrating that the Earth is in the shape of a ball. But of course, the flat earther rebuttal here is that these space photos are a hoax. NASA has faked them. Now, those are some pretty serious allegations, right? These are some pretty extraordinary claims being made against NASA. And extraordinary claims do require extraordinary evidence to substantiate them. So NASA is going to be innocent until proven guilty. So if you want to corroborate this case that NASA is faking all their photos and footage of the Earth from space, you got to have some pretty good evidence to present that that is the case. And so far, I haven't seen it. So with that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and respond to some comments from some flat earthers.
Vacuum means there is nothing, so what is bending?
This flat earther is responding to the idea that gravity can warp space-time, that the vacuum of space can be curved by gravity. Now, if you're wondering what the hell does that have to do with the shape of the Earth, that is a good question. It's really of only tangential relevance to these discussions on whether or not the Earth is flat. And it does seem to be a way of distracting from the main issue at hand. What is the evidence for a flat Earth? A lot of flat earthers just want to, talk about something else. But to answer this guy's question, he says, a vacuum means that there's nothing. So what is it that's bending? Okay, well, a vacuum is considered to contain nothing in the sense that it's perceived as void of matter. Okay, now that does not mean that it contains literally the complete absence of anything at all, including any abstract concept of something with the potential for change. Actually, a vacuum contains within it energy. We call it vacuum energy. I'm surprised you've never heard of it. But then again, I probably shouldn't be, since you are, after all, a flat earther.
And the moon is not on a bus, it's in the supposed vacuum.
Well, to clarify, it's in a gravitational field in the vacuum. It's in the Earth's gravitational field. I talked about this in the video that you're commenting on. That video right there, for anyone who hasn't seen it, needs more context.
The solar system is a plane, so that means space only bends one way?
Well, that was not entirely coherent. Is that a statement or a question? I'm not claiming that space only bends in one direction. Are you?
On the top or the bottom, the thing with the flat Earth is that it's flat, and everything we see makes sense. And with a ball, there is all this confusing shit that tells us what we see is wrong, telling us not to trust ourselves.
What the hell are you talking about? Okay, seriously? Trust your eyes, flat earther. Trust your eyes. Trust your eyes, flat earther. Trust your eyes.
Is there a way to get Neil in here for 2 seconds to explain this? Neil, if you could just take a seat for a second. I need an answer to this. I saw something over the weekend.
Just seat this. You got the microphone, the seat. Yeah. It's all ready for somebody to come in. Just in case.
Just in case. We never know.
All right. Well,
I was watching some videos over the weekend that were preposterous.
Yeah.
There are so many conspiracy theories and whatnot around that you can't even keep track of them. This one blew my mind. The Earth is flat. Have you heard the flat earther people that believe the Earth is flat?
This is a deep failure of our educational system.
Thank you.
I've stopped chasing after people with those belief systems because I don't see the point. There's something deeper going on in our society that somehow enables people to believe they're making cogent arguments when they're not.
They're not.
And so, you know what? I think it is. The way we teach science is you're just some empty vessel and we pour the science into you and then you regurgitate it on an exam.
Right.
Whereas science is a way of thinking. It's a way of understanding and probing the operations of nature. And I try to show people that science is a way of understanding.
Right.
And you can't just pull stuff out of your ass and claim that it's science.
That it's science.
Because you throw some science words behind it. Today is the first full day of Ramadan, which is a holy day in the Muslim calendar. And in Ramadan, you fast during the day and you get to eat at night. Whatever the number of days, you're fasting during the day when the sun is up, and then you get to eat at night. Well, it turns out, I was recently in Dubai, where they have the tallest building in the world, and I did a quick calculation, and I confirmed it with others there, that in fact, they print separate tables for residents at the top of this building, because the sun sets later if you are at the top of that building than if you are at the base. So the sun sets 2 minutes later for you at the top because you're seeing that much farther over the Earth, curvature of the Earth.
So clearly the notion that the flat Earth makes sense with everything we see, but everything associated with the globe Earth is confusing and doesn't make any sense, that's just a load of hooey. I mean, when we present actual evidence that substantiates a bowl-shaped Earth, all we ever get back from the flat earthers is just alternative explanations that aren't actually substantiated with any evidence.
Get over yourself. The Earth is flat, and you will know this soon. Lolo, have fun.
So you're not going to present any evidence that the Earth is flat, but soon I will just somehow magically know that the Earth is flat, basically. Let's look at the next comment.
Why is it that mean sea level, as used in construction as a means of measurement and control points, cannot show 1 measurable inch of curvature in any given 1 mile when re-established above the Earth's surface? Or would that be proof, as water read for a means measurement 72% of Earth is flat, with a change in elevation of over 12 miles from the depths of the oceans to the peak of the highest mountain? This is a very ligament question, but can only be answered by people who are informed on how to use MSL as a measurement, but it hurts the heliocentric theory, so I get childishly attacked for asking a ligament question. So if you can't read MSL to perform a repeatable test that results in a flat measurement, then please just say so and I will move on.
That was actually not entirely coherent, but I think the gist of what he's trying to say is no matter how high up in elevation you go, there's never going to be any evidence whatsoever for curvature, which is actually totally bogus.
When you're a ship at sea and you look out, your horizon in every direction is the same distance from you. Depends on your height above the sea level. That's why ship decks are high. They see farther beyond the curvature of the Earth than you do just standing on the main deck.
So suffice it to say, I still have not seen any evidence to substantiate this idea that the Earth is flat. That being said, I will be responding to another flat earther next week, so to be continued. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace. Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon. As indicated by the title of this video, the Bible proves that the Earth is flat. No, it doesn't. Right. So the inspiration for today's video is a brief interaction that I had not too long ago with a flat earther. I asked him, what is the evidence for a flat Earth? And his response was, read your Bible. Right. Guy doesn't know who he's talking to, hasn't watched my Skeptic Bible Study series, apparently. That's a playlist I have on my YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to have it linked somewhere down below. That being said, the Bible was written by flat earthers. The evidence for that can be found in the Bible. That being said, that does not mean that the Bible provides actual evidence that the Earth actually is flat. I know a lot of people were raised being told that everything in the Bible is the divinely inspired and inerrant Word of God. It's all 100% true. That's what a lot of people have been told, but is that actually accurate? No. No, it's not. Actually, one need look no further than the first 2 chapters of the Bible to find contradictions. Don't get me wrong, there's contradictions all over the place, pretty much all throughout the Bible. But the point here is that it's so easy to find evidence that the Bible is not 100% true just by reading the first 2 chapters. Okay? From there, it's not long afterwards that you find this story that has a talking snake. Later, there's a talking donkey. There's a talking burning bush. There's a story with talking trees. There's a guy who walks up to a giant sea and he miraculously parts the waters. There's a guy whose long hair gives him special powers. When that hair gets cut, he loses those powers. When he grows it back, he gets his powers back. There's another guy who goes around healing the sick, curing the blind, casting out demons, walking on water, turning water into wine, raising people from the dead. He himself supposedly arose from the dead 3 days after being executed. These are wild, outlandish claims. Okay? extraordinary claims. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence to substantiate them. Okay? We don't see wild, fantastic things like this in reality. We don't. To top it all off, there's all this stuff in the Bible that appears to have just been handed down from earlier traditions. Stuff from pagan folklore and mythology. Right? Best example would be the flood story. Right? Because before the story of Noah's Ark, Noah and the worldwide flood, before that, there was this story called the Epic of Gilgamesh. It has its own flood story within the larger story. Right? The flood hero in that story is called Utnapishtim, or at least in our best surviving copy from the Assyrian library. His name is Utnapishtim. He builds a boat to survive a worldwide flood after being warned by a god that there's going to be this flood that's going to wipe out humanity. Right? But even that's based on an earlier tradition. Okay? Babylonian tradition story called Atrahasis. That was the flood hero before Utnapishtim. But even before that, the story goes back to the Sumerians. Sumerian, that's the earliest written language known to us. Sumerians had a flood story where the flood hero is called Ziusudra. He's warned by a god to build a boat to survive the worldwide flood. Right? There's one other god who decides, oh, let's wipe out all of humanity with a flood. It's a different god who warns him, hey, you better build this boat if you want to survive. Okay? And we know that's handed down from one culture to the next. It's handed down from Sumerian tradition to Babylonian to Assyrian, right? Then eventually makes its way into Hebrew tradition, into the Bible. Okay? But like I said, the flood story, that's only one example of a story handed down to biblical tradition from pagan tradition. Okay, there's other examples too. So we're going to see all these circumstances in the Bible where there's a story that has simply been adapted from what is known to be pagan mythology, fictional stories involving gods and people's interactions with them. Now, don't get me wrong, this flood story is probably at least loosely based on an actual flood. It's just that that flood didn't actually cover the entire planet. Alright? Gotta keep in mind that in antiquity, people hadn't discovered as much land. Okay? Look at this. This is the earliest world map known to us. It's Babylonian, and it depicts a very incomplete picture of the world, with central focus on the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Other ancient flat earth maps show part of Africa, part of Europe, and part of Asia, but each of these continents is incomplete, cut off by the great river that was perceived to go around the circle of the earth. So these ancient flat earth maps don't even have continents like North America, South America, Australia, Antarctica, right? They didn't know about them. They hadn't discovered these places. Now, there were people living in the Americas. There were people living in Australia. They weren't, coordinating with the people living in these regions of, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Okay? They didn't know each other. These were not lands that people of Africa, Europe, and Asia were visiting. Okay? So what they showed in their maps was what they knew about. Okay? They were just showing what they knew, which was not a complete picture. These were less developed societies. I was once watching this flat earther video where this guy was telling this story. He says, once upon a time there was this civilization here on Earth. It was the most advanced civilization that has ever existed, more advanced than any civilization alive today. Right? He's saying this happened thousands of years ago, back in antiquity. It's like, where's this guy getting this information from? What is his source material? And as he continues to tell the story, you realize, oh, he's telling the story of the Tower of Babel from the Bible. Right? But you know, he's kind of inserting into that story things that the Bible doesn't even talk about. And we've definitely seen this kind of thing before. We talked about this in my video on the inconsistencies in Genesis, how sometimes people are trying to defend this idea that everything in the Bible is 100% true. You know, they have to respond to the contradictions in the Bible, right? When people point out contradictions, they have to try and say, well, no, these are not actually contradictions. You know, here's how this all works together. You guys are misunderstanding this. And in the process, they start making shit up. They start you know, kind of adding stuff to it that isn't there, kind of acting like stuff that is there is not there, right? You know, great example is when Hugh Ross is talking about how on day 3 of creation, yes, God gives the earth the ability to produce vegetation, but the earth doesn't actually start producing vegetation until later. You know, he says that to try and, you know, make it so that chapters 1 and 2 work together as part of a single consistent narrative, but they do not. It turns out if you actually read the part in question, after it talks about how God gave the earth the ability to produce vegetation, it then describes how the earth brought forth that vegetation. You know, it brought forth grass, you know, herb yielding seed after its kind, trees yielding fruit after their kind. This is all happening on day 3. So there really is no good empirical case that can be made to validate this idea that everything in the Bible is 100% true. That's the kind of thing that you can believe based on faith, despite the evidence against it. But if we're going off of the actual evidence that is actually available to us, it demonstrates that the Bible is not 100% true. The idea that the Bible is 100% true is a load of hooey. Okay? And this idea that the Bible somehow provides evidence for a flat earth just because it's written by flat earthers, that's BS. And by BS, I of course mean bad science. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Next week, I will be responding to another flat earther. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you for watching. Peace, and have a good one. Hey guys, welcome back to The Mind of Brandon. As indicated by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about moon shadows. So, a couple weeks ago, I posted a video called More Flat Earthers Fail to Provide Evidence of Flat Earth. And one of the things I talked about in that video was how during a lunar eclipse, the Earth casts a curved shadow on the moon. And in response to that part, I got a comment.
Sun and moon both visible above us in the daytime. Where's the shadow coming from on those occasions, huh?
This is a deep failure of our educational system.
Thank you.
Basically, the shadow that you see on the moon during a lunar eclipse is not the same shadow that you see on the moon during its normal phases. So, whereas the shadow that we see on the moon during a lunar eclipse is the Earth's shadow, the shadow that we see during the normal phases of the moon, well, that's coming from the fact that, you know, part of the moon is facing toward the sun, and there's another part that's facing away. It's shaded from the sun's light.
Hi, my name is Emily Morgan, and I'm the author of Next Time You See the Moon from NSTA Kids. And I'd like to share a simple activity with you that can help you understand why the moon looks different at different times throughout the month. Why sometimes it looks like a banana, and other times it looks like half of a circle, and other times it looks like a big round ball. Well, to do this activity, you only need 4 simple things. You need a lamp with the shade removed, a white foam ball, a pencil, and a dark room. The darker the room, the better. Now in this model, the lamp is going to represent the sun, and of course the white foam ball is going to represent the moon, and your head is going to represent the Earth. So let me show you how this works. We know that the moon orbits the Earth. So in this model, I'm going to get the moon, the foam ball, to orbit the Earth, my head. Notice that no matter where the moon is in its orbit, half of it is always lit up by the sun. But when the moon is in this position, I can't see any of the lighted side of the moon from Earth, my head. From this angle, you can see what I am seeing from Earth. We call this new moon. When it's new moon, we look up at the sky and we can't see the moon. It's there, but the side that's reflecting sunlight is away from us. Now, as I slowly make the moon orbit to my left, I can begin to see a tiny sliver of that lighted side. We call that a crescent moon. As the moon keeps orbiting, we can see more and more of that lighted side. We see half of the lighted half, which is a quarter moon. In this case, a first quarter moon. As we keep orbiting, we see almost the whole lighted side. We call that a gibbous moon. Then, when we can see the entire lighted half of the moon, that's a full moon. As the moon continues in its orbit, we begin to see less and less of that lighted side. We're back to a gibbous moon, but this time the light is on the opposite side. Then another quarter moon, last quarter moon to be exact. Another crescent, and finally back to new moon. And the cycle begins again. So why does the moon appear in different shapes throughout the month? Because of its orbit. The shape or phase of the moon depends on where it is in its orbit around Earth. It takes about a month for the moon to orbit the Earth. So when you look up at the moon today, know that you'll see that same phase again about a month from now.
So don't make the mistake that I used to make, which was to assume that a new moon and a lunar eclipse are the same thing. They're not. That's actually way off. The positions are all wrong. Okay? Actually, a lunar eclipse only happens during a full moon, not a new moon. Right? New moon looks kind of similar to a lunar eclipse because the moon, goes completely dark. But a new moon, that's going to happen every month. Okay, once every single month. It happens 12 times a year. Okay. A lunar eclipse only happens a few times a year. Okay. And when it does happen, it's well, if we see the beginning of a lunar eclipse being when we first see that curved shadow moving across the moon, and then it's over when the shadow's gone, that process only lasts like 3-4 hours, something like that. Okay, so it's brief. Okay, it doesn't last very long. So there are ways of distinguishing it from a new moon. Hopefully that sufficiently clears things up, helps you better understand these various shadows that we sometimes see on the moon. That said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace.